When you picture a lighthouse, you probably see a lonely tower getting slammed by waves. But what if I told you that each one of those beacons is basically a vessel packed with unbelievable stories? Today, we're going to shine a light on these amazing structures, and we're using the fantastic Lighthearted podcast from the United States Lighthouse Society as our guide.
And that's really the question, isn't it? We all see that beam of light sweeping across the dark water, and we think of safety, of guidance. But behind that light, there's this whole hidden world of people, keepers, artists, adventurers, even a few ghosts.
All right, so here's how we're going to dive in. First, we'll look at the incredible buildings themselves. Then, we'll meet some of the fascinating people keeping their legacies alive. After that, we're going to check out some wild, modern lighthouse adventures. And finally, we'll talk about why it's so important to save all these stories.
So, first up, the lighthouses. And let me tell you, they are not all just tall, round towers on some rocky cliff. The designs are just as different as the coastlines they protect. From these beautiful historic icons to, get this, massive floating beacons.
And this comparison just nails that diversity. On the left, you've got Old Baldy. It's the oldest lighthouse still standing in North Carolina, a true piece of history. But then on the right, that's the Nantucket lightship LV-112. It was the biggest of its kind ever built, basically a floating lighthouse, and today it's a museum up in Boston. Totally different designs, but both had the exact same job, to save lives.
Of course, these amazing structures are really just empty shells without the people who ran them, and the folks who are now fighting to preserve their stories. Because every light has a keeper, and you better believe, every keeper has a story. And the whole idea of a keeper has changed in some really cool ways. The Lighthearted podcast doesn't just chat with the old-timers. No way. They feature everyone from Coast Guard keepers who are at these isolated stations back in the 70s to modern novelists writing stories set in forgotten lighthouses, and even the founders of museums who are dedicated to their one local light. It's an amazing crew. This inspiration, it goes way beyond just history. It spills right into art. The podcast talks to people like Not Brooke Taylor, who's an award-winning Scottish poet. He finds this deep, profound meaning in the loneliness and the strength of these places and just turns their history into beautiful poetry.
So all this passion for lighthouses, it brings us to a really fun part. Because these places aren't just sitting around collecting dust. They've actually become these vibrant destinations for some of the most unique adventures you can have.
For example, if you're up on the coast of Maine, you can do way more than just see a lighthouse from the beach. There are companies like the Bar Harbor Whale Watch and this beautiful schooner called the Merry Day that offer special cruises that get you right up close to these coastal giants. You get to see them from a sailor's point of view.
But what if you want to get even closer? Like, what if you could actually sleep in one? Well, you can. The podcast takes us all the way to Sweden, to this place called Paternoster. It's an incredible island lighthouse that's been turned into an award-winning hotel. Seriously, can you imagine a room with a view like that?
And the adventures can also get a little spooky. Over at the Fairport Harbor Lighthouse and Museum on Lake Erie, people, visitors, and staff have been telling stories for years about a resident ghost cat. It just proves you literally never know what you're going to find when you step inside one of these old places. Okay, so we've seen the incredible structures, we've met the people, we've even imagined the adventures. But this all leads to the final and maybe the most important question of all. Why does this stuff matter? What's the real legacy of these guiding lights? Well, the podcast that sparked this whole explainer, Lighthearted, is run by the United States Lighthouse Society. They're a nonprofit, and their whole mission, their entire reason for being, is to make sure these incredible buildings, and more importantly, the human stories locked inside them, are not forgotten. They work to preserve them, to educate people, and to keep that flame alive for the next generation. And that's what's so powerful here. Lighthouses prove that every old building, every local landmark, it's not just stone and steel. It's a container for stories. So that leaves us with one last thought. What's the lighthouse in your town? What local spot holds a story that's just waiting for somebody like you to come and find it?